Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for seek power always, that power within you to do your deeper work in the world. I am so delighted to have our next guest here on the show, who is Leah Sefor, who is South Africa's go-to life and relationship expert. She is well known for being a straight-talking, take-no-prisoners life coach, author, podcaster, and speaker whose work is all about what it means to be real. Leah delivers dynamic coaching experiences, facilitating breakthroughs, and giving men and women the wake-up calls that they need to create a non-negotiable life. Leah is the host of the Get Real podcast, has an online series called Real Talk, created the popular Lockdown Coaching video and podcast series, and is the author of 2 books, The Freedom Factor, an ebook on boundaries, as well as her recently published book, That's Not What I Meant, the Smart Savvy Guide to Real Communication. Leah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Well, I think it's wonderful to just start with, I love the newest title about That's Not What I Meant. And, you know, if you look at world events right now, especially the last couple of years, there's been like this shakeup in the world of a beehive where people are going in all kinds of different directions. There's a lot of miscommunication. There is a lot of censorship. You know, there's just a lot of things that are being thrown at people at a very different way. What's your thoughts as far as helping people recognize what's happening with that and how they can up-level their communication?
Well, you know, the deep misunderstandings and misinterpretations can get extremely out of control with people's reactive natures if they don't, you know, pay attention to what their triggers are when it comes to communication. And we all have to really understand that we all operate with completely different levels of reality. You know, what I see reality as being is not what you see it as being. And everyone on earth has their own view of reality. So we make a lot of assumptions in communication that what we are saying is going to be received in exactly the same way by the other person, and that they understand vocabulary and body language and tone of voice in the same way that we do, and they really don't. And I think the title of my book was because anyone who's ever been in a relationship and has a fight with their partner ends up saying something like, no, but you're not listening. That's not what I said. Well, I didn't mean that, you know? So it's not what I meant. I didn't, you know, you're not listening to me. And really we only hear communication through the filters of our minds. So whatever we believe reality to be, that's how we're going to filter what somebody else is saying to us. So part of shifting communication is really getting that the other person sees things and hears things very differently to you and seeking to understand what their view of reality is, especially if this is an important person in your life, like a partner or a business colleague or absolutely your children or friends or family. And people dangerously assume that family share the same perspective. And they don't. You know, if anyone's got brothers and sisters, you know, you do not see the world the same way. So you know, this book was really about identifying your system. It's a profiling book that there are 4 communication systems, and you're going to fall into one of them. And that the system dictates very specific behaviors, vocabulary, body postures, body reactions, the way you like to face reality, the way you want to receive reality in, the way you want to operate in your home, at work, you know, with your family, with your friends. So it's very specific to each of these systems. And I think when a lot of people can read this and understand, oh, my partner is not being an ass, they're just this other system that I didn't know. And now I can shift the way I communicate so they can really hear me. And they can learn how to shift their communication with me so that, you know, I can hear them. So it's simple, but very profound if you can start removing, you know, the kind of veil of misinterpretations.
Right. You know, it's so important. I mean, one of the things I remember from being in the police department, because I've been in thousands of homes and had, you know, many conversations, and usually when people weren't necessarily in their best selves. And so, you know, to be able to know that people have different types of communication, and to realize that, you know, just because we feel like we are plainly explaining something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's landing for that other person. So, you know, saying something and to knowing whether they received it in a way. And this is where I love that you talk about communication in terms of body language and all the other aspects of it, because the voice is just one aspect of it, right? In fact, a lot of people, some people are watching, us right now, and some people are listening to the podcast. So there's different ways that people receive information, and we need to make sure that and this is where curiosity and investigation comes in, is to just continue to ask questions till you get someone actually nodding their head more like, okay, I get this, versus the deer in the headlights where it's like nothing is landing, right? And there's where some of the frustration can come in, is when you're trying to communicate something that somebody is not absorbing and they're not actually being able to have it land for them. So if people are noticing that, and especially now, it's very interesting that there's a lot of dividing conversations going on, where it's like people feel it's like, I'm right, you're wrong. They're trying to make things very black and white, and there's only one way to look at things. And so how can you help people really look at their perspective is just one perspective, right? And you don't have to agree with someone else's perspective, but being curious and open to another point of view. Isn't that how we evolve our knowledge? This is how we get more information. This is how we hopefully, as evolving people, are able to shift our perspectives as part of having, our experience along the way.
Absolutely. And learning requires listening, and people don't want to listen. People want to talk. So, people listen to respond. So I'm hearing you, but I'm waiting until there's a gap in the conversation for me to cut you off, interrupt you, override what you've said, say something like, yes, but, or no, I don't agree with that, or no, you're wrong. And you are just so utterly dismissive of somebody else when you behave like that, because they really are teaching you who they are through how they speak. And if you can really hear what someone is saying to you, you can learn a lot more about them. Now, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of divisiveness everywhere in the world at the moment. And all of it is fear-based. Everybody is coming from a very fear-based place at the moment. It has been escalating over quite a few varied issues over quite some time. But I feel that the trauma of what COVID and the pandemic has done to us has compacted that fear and that deep grief and loss in us, to the point that our resilience is gone. So in the past, when we might have been able to have that buffer of patience and let me understand where you're coming from and tell me and explain it to me in a way that I can get it, people don't have that at the moment. People feel triggered very, very quickly. And we have to just be very conscious about our triggers. If somebody is saying something, and I think the biggest argument on the planet at the moment is to vax or not to vax. And I don't know in the States, but I know that in South Africa, there's this ongoing fight and all the conspiracy theories that go on around it. And it's heated and it's bad because it's within families, and parents don't want to let their children get it. And so it's a whole story, which we don't need to get into. But the bottom line is that everybody, has their belief. But the belief is there because of a lot of proof and evidence and justification that person has gone through to reach that belief. Mm-hmm. And instead of attacking the belief, you have to understand what's supporting the belief. Like, what is the evidence you have to believe this? That is what I would love to know. And I think when you really ask questions, asking why questions is like the dissolving fluid of belief systems. Well, why do you think that is what it is? Well, where did you get that from? Why do you think that person said that? Why do you think that's their intention? So asking why questions gets the other person into critical thinking. And it looks like you really, because you're very interested now in seeing where they're coming from and exactly what you said, even if you don't agree with it. You can always be open to receiving and understanding. And then sharing your perspective. And when people do not feel attacked, they are open to hearing. But if you're just coming out and going, well, you're the reason, everyone's dying because you refuse to get vaccinated and you're this and you're that, people are just going to shut down completely and then have no respect for what your beliefs or what your whys are. So conversation has to slip beyond just the surface stuff.
Right. Well, we've done a lot of consulting and supporting of people, of knowing like where they are in the moment. And there's that difference between being in a survivor mind, right, where they're just reacting and they're trying to just deflect from feeling attacked, versus what's known as an executive state, right, where you're actually clear and you're actually able to listen to those why questions and have those things happen. And I agree with you that there is, fear has definitely come into play of what people have used as the basis of their belief system to do something. And, I think that it's beyond, get vaxxed, don't get vaxxed. It's like, how are you deriving at the decision to do that and to be able to have the choice to be able to make that decision and know where you're getting that from. And so, I always look at, okay, follow the money, like who benefits from the information that comes out and what it actually looks like. And so each person has to make those kind of decisions for themselves and their family. And especially when it affects family dynamics, you need to have a set of tools to be able to look at that. Fear, I think, is definitely something that is a program that gets run with a lot of different people. What are some of the tools that you use for yourself to move through fear, and how do you help your clients really recognize that and have the tools to deal with any fears that come up?
So, recognizing that fear is absolutely more than often going to trigger that fight, flight, freeze response. So you can feel it in your body. You can feel shaky. You feel that adrenaline happening. Your heart rate goes up. Your breathing gets rapid. So the first thing for me is always just focus on your breath. Just really, and people get so irritated. I know when my daughter's in a state and I say, just take a deep breath. She's like, stop telling me to breathe deeply. She gets so irritated with me. But I know how deep breathing completely regulates your nervous system. It completely just brings you offline from that fight, flight, freeze response. Because like you were saying, that executive thinking is not happening when fight, flight, freeze is kicked in. And if somebody's in that state, there's no rational thought going on and there's no critical thinking going on. So overcoming fear requires critical thinking. And if you're just reactive in the fear, you're not thinking about what's really going on or observing. So first of all, take a deep breath, regulate your nervous system. Then step back to really observe the situation. It's like being the observer and looking at the movie of what's going on. So remove yourself from it, observe the characters in it of what is going on so that you can really go, well, what is this feeling about? What is the trigger about? Is it something they did? Is it something they said? Can I just look at what the source of this is in my life? Because, fear is a reaction. And if you think of the word reaction, you are reacting. You are doing the same action you did last time. It's a replay. And that replay is based on a previous event or a previous experience. And so is that one, and so is that one. So it's a really powerful opportunity to introspect and go, I know that my body's feeling really uncomfortable, but underneath that, there's a thought process here I need to pay attention to. So definitely look at what those triggers are and recognize that very often fear is your conscious mind's way of just keeping you safe. So there's rational fear and then there's irrational fear. And actually, most of the time, the fear we experience is irrational. Rational fear is somebody's chasing me and I'm about to get hurt, so it's natural to feel fear in that moment. Irrational fear is I can't launch my podcast because everybody's going to think I'm stupid and they're going to laugh at me and I'll fail and then my wife will leave me and, I'll just be, it's that hysterical kind of worst case scenario stuff that we get into, which again requires the deep breathing, the regulating, and just sitting with it and going, okay, well, instead of focusing just on what could go wrong, let's also look at what could go right. What if it's a fantastic success? What if I get a job offer out of this? What if people want to interview me? It's look at what the possibilities are as well as the negative and force yourself to have that balanced view. So yeah, I'm saying it's a lot of introspection. And I know it sounds easy and I know it's really not, because in the moment when the fear is there, it's all consuming. Mm-hmm. But we have to learn how to just definitely shut down any external feedback. So get off the news, shut off social media, get away from the radio, just stop listening, watching, like hearing external input so that you've got some silence to just think about your own voice and what your truth is. Because this external stuff creates a huge amount of unnecessary fear.
Absolutely. So important to just unplug yourself from the moment. And I love that distinction of, we are not our mind. And so just because all of these things just, roll up in our head doesn't mean we have to act on them. We have the opportunity to step back and, it's so funny. I get the same rolling of eyes. I tell, family clients all the time about the deep breathing, because people don't realize that deep breath gets to your brain, that allows your brain to actually expand, to actually be able to have those kind of conversations. And so it may sound like something very simple, and the act of it is, but the ripple effect and the impact of it is so substantial. So, it's an important thing. It's not something just flippantly, oh, just breathe, right? There's when you know what's behind that and what it actually allows you to do, and being present is so important. So I think that is a great recipe to give people to move forward in what they're about. And so one of the other things is that being able to consciously create your life. And I know you had mentioned to me about how you do vision boarding a month ahead of time. And I'm curious about that, because a lot of times people will, in the beginning of the year, they'll do vision boarding for the year, right? Or they'll be, I'm just curious about this month ahead visioning.
So I've worked with the field of intention setting and vision boarding for a very long time. And I find like the big hairy goals are never reachable for people, because they genuinely don't believe they can get there. And it's great to, have all the affirmation and to like visualize in your head and go, well, right now I'm earning $3,000 a month, but I really want to be earning $50,000 a month. And I can totally do that. Like, there's a huge part of you that does not believe that you can get to $50,000 a month. So we've got to shift our belief systems incrementally. So slowly prove to ourselves that we can overcome and we can do something. Because once we can shift that and go, okay, well, I'm going to do some sideline work. I'm going to start my side hustle. I'm going to put it out there. And maybe at the end of this month, I'll have an extra $2,000 in my bank account. And then maybe next month, I'll be able to have another extra $3,000. And, when that extra 2,000 lands, there's a part of you that goes, oh, I did that. And I can. And you now shift your internal, belief system that it is possible. So I have found, working with people who want to do the whole year ahead, I mean, if anything has been proof of how life can knock us on our ass, it's this pandemic. And everybody had these amazing plans for themselves at the beginning of last year. And now, where are we? And so people get very attached so far in the future that they forget to be present in the now. And that is why I bring it down to a 1 month situation. So let's just look at this month. What can I accomplish this month? And for most people, intention is around their weight or how they want to eat or exercise. It's around financial freedom. It's around relationship finding. And you also can't do all of that at the same time. It's too much to put yourself through. So I'm a big fan of picking one objective and focusing for 1 month, and then breaking that down into the 4 weeks of the month. And then going, okay, like, what have I got to do in this first week that's going to be the stepping stone to week 2, then to week 3, and then to week 4, and then I'm going to be able to get that intention. So, and my intentions shift. Like, some months I'm really interested in this, and other months I'm really interested in something else. And if you're setting the year intention, it's only focusing in a single direction and not allowing the possibility for flow in any other areas of your life. So I tend to focus, on the big picture for a month. And I'm not saying I don't have the big pictures for the 4 years, 6 years, where we ultimately want to be. And my husband and I do a lot of this. We do a lot of co-visioning together of where do we want our life to be by the end of this year? Where would we like, our family to be 2 years from now? Those are fantastic pictures to have, but the day-to-day focus then has to come right back into this moment right now of what am I doing in this month that's going to support me getting to that vision.
Right.
So that's the 1 month at a time.
I love that, and I think it's not either or, it's and, right? And so it allows you to get really clear and have that flexibility. And, we're human creatures. And so something that we may be really excited about in January, that may shift and flow, and we want to, focus on a different area of our life or something. And I think a lot of times people will make themselves wrong for that. Whereas you're listening to your internal compass, where you're like, okay, which way am I going and what's this look like? And this is where you're asking more questions, right? So is it questions that I'm stopping to do it because I don't think I can get there and it's more of a self-doubt type situation? Or is it truly a lack of interest and you're shifting directions? Because a lot of times, people will set something and not until they actually get moving that they realize, oh, I actually don't really want that, but they'll still move in that direction, even though it's not something that inspires them. And I think the whole thing around having vision and having a goal is one that you really want it. And so a lot of people say, oh, I want to make $1 million, or I want to drive a certain car, but then they're moving in that direction and they thought that because maybe other people had that expectation for them, but it's not necessarily something that they truly want. So I think that allows you by utilizing that as a tool, as a monthly tool, to get really clear on what are you putting your energy into and what are you doing, and are you moving towards something or away from it, or is it time to jump on a different road? So I love that it gives you flow and options to be able to look at something like that.
And don't make decisions. Decision is a very limiting statement. There's a difference between choice and decision. And if I decide this is the path that I'm taking, anyone who's had a parent who said that, I've decided and that's it, that there's no room for negotiation there. Conversation is over. So right. we trap ourselves in decision. And then exactly 3-4 months later, we like, I don't know if this path is ready for me, but I decided and I promised and I have to follow through with that. And exactly now you're definitely not going to manifest, because the manifestation is all to do with the frequency that you are operating from. And if your frequency becomes one of restriction and resentment and tiredness, what do you think you're going to be attracting into your life? You're not going to be attracting anything into your life. So we've got to be very awake to our internal feeling around something that we want. And if it gets to the point of, I thought I wanted this, but I don't, then let it go. Because that I don't is already shifting your frequency into a place that's not going to be manifesting. So your choice is, today I'm choosing this, and tomorrow I might choose something else. And you know what? Both options are completely okay.
Yeah, I love the flexibility in that. I think we get so rigid in so many different areas, and it's important to have that distinction of you're not just being willy-nilly about something, but you're allowing yourself flow about the direction and how it goes there. One of my favorite quotes, Clement Watt talks about, take the first step, no more, no less, and the next step will be revealed. And just as you were speaking to having that vision board, that's 12 steps down the road. And, that can be really great. But if you're not looking at where are you at that first step, going to the second step, then it can get lost in the minutia of, really having that true focus about where it is that you're headed.
And I love the analogy of the GPS. When you put a GPS location in, what you're basically saying is, this is where I am, this is where I'd like to be, and you're leaving the magic journey to the GPS. But it's a bit like that with intention setting in the universe. You're saying to the universe, this is where I want to be, but you can't be driving safely if your focus is just staring at the map the whole journey. You're going to smash into something. So set the intention, but bring your focus right here and now and focus on what is right in front of you to make sure that you arrive at that place in one piece.
I love it. So great. Well, talking about actually, creating and setting some intentions, one of the questions that I love to ask my guests is that we have different experiences in our life, in our home, as far as how we are in our bedroom versus our kitchen or our office. What is your favorite room in your home and why?
I've got a special reading nook. So it's a little room. It's quite small with my library. So, ceiling to floor shelving with all of my books and a beautiful chair. And, so much of my job, and I think, you can relate to this, is in front of a screen and in front of camera and with tech all the time. So when I've got a break, that's a room, there's no tech allowed in that room. I don't take my phone in there. And that's where I go and read and connect with me. So my little reading library is my favorite place.
I love that. I always think that libraries are such this special place because there's something tactical about, I listen to audiobooks and I have, books on my devices, but there's something, I started a habit of reading an actual book that you turn the pages before bed. One, it's to not have electronics before bed, but it's just to have that, it feels like an indulgent experience in some way, right? To just be able to, and not to also not listen to something that I have to learn something about, right? Too, because I think that's also a habit to get into, is that unless it has some sort of personal growth or meaning or something, and just to have like a fun story, right? Or something that's light is just a fun thing. I mean, I like having both, and there's different times for that, but giving yourself permission to just be in the moment and to just enjoy a novel, I think is a lost art in many ways.
I totally agree with you. And my favorite genre is science fiction and fantasy, because my job is such intense reality that I like to just disappear into worlds where, it's not about exactly having to learn something or having to read, about my field, which of course I do, but that's work for me. That's not where I find my relax or my pleasure in terms of switching off. So I don't have those books in my library. Those books are workbooks, and those are in my office. So my library it's very different genres of books that I can disappear into.
Right. And it's so important to have things outside of what you would normally look at, because that triggers creativity, right? And so that keeps you separate to your brain, then looks at things differently. And like we all know, there's like, you get these best ideas maybe when you're in your shower or your bathtub, or you're out in the street, or you're doing something different than you normally do, because your brain has a chance to look at different things in a different way. And so many things get solved that way, and so many things get tied up by just having different experiences. And so I think reading allows yourself to have those different experiences, that your brain's kind of still working in a different way, and then it's like, wow, that just happened to come to me.
And I think it's really important to expose yourself to literature that you normally wouldn't. And go and buy a book that's not really a genre that you normally read, because it is our responsibility to expand our consciousness, our perspective. And I find that a lot of people get very stuck in limiting belief systems, because that's what they've decided, and they're going to stay there. And then they're only going to socialize with people that enhance that belief system. They're only going to read books that enforce that belief system. And they're not going to expand themselves outside of that viewpoint, which is very limiting. So you've got to read biographies. You've got to read, current affairs. You've got to read genres that is not always the same, to just help you expand your awareness of what is going on in the world. I mean, there's just, for me, no excuse in this current world to not know what is going on. You have just got access to too much stuff out there to say, well, I didn't know. So learn, and be willing to constantly be a student through your entire life, and learn about other cultures, and learn about other religions, and learn about other ways, because you might find something really interesting in there that'll help you understand your fellow man a lot more.
I love that so much. And, I think that one of the things I think is helpful for our listeners is that, they see success, they see the end of the road, but they don't necessarily see the journey of getting there. And so I'd love for you to share maybe some disempowering times, like things that maybe weren't going things as well as for you, or things that were challenging for you, and how you move through those.
So, that's a big question. And like, how far back do you want me to go? Go right back to childhood. So I think a big part of my journey of what it means to be real is standing in who I am as a woman, with no excuse and no apology, and definitely not conforming myself physically or in any other way to make it with a man. And I think, when I was younger and I was entering the world of relationships, when I was, just out of school and in my early 20s, there were some toxic relationships in my life, because I didn't know what relationship was. And I allowed myself to feel not good enough, or, not okay enough, and try to become some version that, these partners wanted me to be. And it takes a long time to know who you are, and to put a boundary in place, and to say, that's not okay for me. And if that is your requirement to stay in a relationship with me, then the relationship is ending here and now. So it's overcoming that fear of being on your own. It's overcoming, if I say no, are they going to hate me? Are they going to leave me? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to ridicule me? And if the answer is yes, 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 and yes, then also, so what? If they are going to ridicule you, and they are going to leave you, and they are going to judge you, that's their stuff. It's got nothing to do with you. And the more I recognize this whole thing of, we have got different perspectives of what is going on here, the more I realize, I'm responsible for how I show up. I am not responsible for how you receive me. And if how I'm showing up is not how you want to receive me, then great, and goodbye. So, I think the disempowering stuff was how many years I allowed myself to feel like crap about myself, because, some person I was in a relationship with didn't like it. So I think a lot of women have had that experience. A lot of men have had that experience. And what it takes to find your self-esteem and to overcome that and to stand in your power and to be authentic in yourself and to go, well, this is who I am in the world. Fly your freak flag. I love that. And you will attract your tribe. So stop trying to conform. You are here to be your unique self. That's why you were born, and you're not here to conform to be like somebody else. Be your own. So that's an ongoing journey, and it's a big one.
I really love that. And I think that our listeners really appreciate that conversation, because I think a lot of times intuitively we know that to be ourself. But when we hear, and I think this comes with experience, right? That you get to learn more of who you are, and having boundaries becomes really important, and having clarity about what you value and what that looks like, and to stand up for that. And that's part of what we talk about here about to stand in your power, and that you are your own power, right? That's accessing who you are uniquely here to be. And I think it's a very important message that you're talking about, that our listeners really lean into. And I know that they're going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they do that?
So you can follow me on all social media platforms, and my handle is Leah Sefor, LeahSefor, and that's my website, leahsefor.com. So yeah, connect with me through any platform. It'll be lovely to meet you.
Wonderful. And we'll put your information in the show notes so people can easily get a hold of that as well. And as you know, our focus this year, our theme is for people being a force for good. So how are you being a force for good in the world today?
Well, really challenging men and women to own their power, stop apologizing for who you are in the world, working very deeply with people to confront their smallness, and reminding people that, to remember who you truly are, you have to forget who they told you to be. And when you can drop this act of needing to make it with anybody else in the world other than yourself, you will find freedom and liberation in yourself. So, shine your light, stand in your power, stop apologizing, and be completely non-negotiable in the world.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and being here with us on the show today.
Pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, that is definitely the wisdom takeaway today is, move away from what people are telling you who to be, and to stand in your own power and to be that. So please, if you have any questions, whatever platform you're on, please put them in the comment. Tag both myself and Leah. We'll answer any questions that you may have. Please share this wide. Make sure that people are hearing these positive messages. That people are in a lot of flux right now, and there's a lot happening in the world, and they need to have the tools to be able to address them and make those things happen. So please share. If you've not subscribed yet, we'd so appreciate that you do that, and 5-star reviews and whatever comments you have, positive, negative, neutral, whatever they are. We want to hear all of them. Please put them in there. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.